Good evening, and I'd like to welcome you for another lecture in the Archaeological Society lecture series for this year. Today, it is a great pleasure to introduce the speaker, Dr. Mario Mata-González, who is a postdoctoral researcher in Mediterranean zoology and paleontology based at the Department of Archaeology. Mario is also a research associate at the Max Planck Institute of Geanthropology as part of the Human Paleosystem Research Group. Before all of this, he had studied and obtained a BA in history at the University of Granada in Spain, and then an MSc and a PhD in archaeological sciences at the University of Tübingen in Germany. As a zooarchaeologist, Mario's research focuses on the study of hominin-animal interactions during the late Pleistocene, early Holocene, with a special focus on the reconstruction of site formation processes, hominin subsistence strategies, and paleoenvironmental conditions. Mario has analyzed faunal assemblages from numerous late Pleistocene and Holocene sites located in Israel, Iran, the Republic of Georgia, and Malta, and has also participated in excavations in Spain, in Germany, in Poland, in Italy, in Iran, in Angola, in South Africa, and finally in Malta. He has published as a first author numerous papers in peer-reviewed journals, including quaternary science reviews and scientific reports, and he is a co-author on a number of publications, including journals like Evolutionary Anthropology and Anthropological and Archaeological Sciences. And he's got more things coming. Tonight, he will be talking to us about reconstructing the Neanderthal diet, recent advances in archaeological research. Over to you, Mario. Thank you.
Thank you so much to everybody for coming, and to Professor Bella for such a nice introduction. I would also like to thank Dr. Patricia Camilleri for the invitation to talk here at the Archaeological Society of Malta. It is a pleasure. I really wanted to talk about the research that I conducted here in Malta with Professor Leonard Sherry, but the data collection is still ongoing. It is still too early, so maybe next year I can come back to talk about Malta. But today I decided to focus on a topic that's very close to my heart, the Neanderthal. For my PhD in Germany, I studied Iranian site, where part of the site had been dated and attributed to the period where Neanderthal were around. So, in part of you, I'm gonna just give you some highlighted regarding some of the scientific methods that we can use to study past human diet. If you're interested about archaeology in Malta, just think about how this method can be applied here to the local record to answer some of the archaeological questions that we still. I don't pretend to make a review here about the discovery of the Neanderthal, how our perception of the Neanderthal has changed through time, but just a few notes. The very first Neanderthal individual was discovered in 1856 at the German site called Kleinefelshofer Grotte, not far away from modern-day Düsseldorf, in the Neanderthal Valley. That's why it's called Homo neanderthalensis. And just keep in mind the date, 1856. That's 2 years before the publication of the origin of the species by Charles Darwin. So it must have been very shocking for us who didn't accept the concept of evolution, or that we share the world with other species. And suddenly you have this weird looking skull. Actually, when it was described and discovered, a lot of naturalists, a lot of scientists refused to accept these finds, and they just thought that it was Montebello idiot. I was reported and described like that. Most of no. So one of the most popular description reconstruction of the popular section, what is an Neanderthal, was done by Boulet. Boulet was a French, not paleontologist, like I think he was a medical doctor. He studied human anatomy. He described these remains as being very brutish, very low cognitive capabilities. But the thing is that this perception Neanderthal goes all the way back to the very discovery of the Neanderthal. For example, when you take a look at the description done by the Victorian naturalist Thomas Huxley, for example, he thought that most likely there was anything more than the soulless brains of a savage inside this type of skull. Also, the anatomy who described the German anatomy who described the bone, Hermann Schaffhaus, if I pronounce the name correctly. Also, because we are talking about the context of the 19th century, about the archaeology of human races, all these type of perception were very ingrained even within science. Today we have a very different perception of what being a Neanderthal means. Today we don't see them as a second-hand made early release hominin in a pathway to extinction, in a pathway to nowhere. We know that they were very flexible, capable humans. They they were explorer, they were survival, they spread through time and space, and they basically were pioneering different ways of what being human means. Yeah, basically they inhabiting all the way from the Atlantic coast of Europe to the Altai Mountains in East Central Asia, and they span from around 400,000 years till 30,000 years ago, when what we call Neanderthal based on osteological characteristics disappear from the archaeological record. Most of the changes that have occurred in our change in the knowledge of Neanderthal in the last 50 or 70 years are related to all the amazing scientific advances that have occurred in our discipline in archaeology as a science. I have a Master of Science and a PhD in the Faculty of Geoscience Mathematics. And when we talk about archaeological science, we talk about the scientific application that we use to address archaeological and historical questions. We don't focus on a specific period or region, but we focus on meso and top. When I talk to my mom, who didn't have the opportunity to go to college, she didn't even finish high school, she always answered me, she always asked me the same question: how do you know that? It's not very easy because you are surrounded by academics and they realize that talking to people with that background is very hard. And nowadays we have two disciplines such as botany, the study of plants, or even micro remains that can allow to climate or human diet. We can understand we can take a look at the chemical composition of the bones to understand that was given to us. I forgot to say, and of course, through archaeology, I study fauna remains recovered from the archaeological context, but I always say that I'm not interested in animals per se. I want to study animal-human interaction, to study this bone in relation to human. I want to understand what humans do about their cognitive capabilities, about their social organization, about their adaptability to a given environment. And sorry, no, what is
Just press it.
sorry, I didn't pay attention to that. As I said, today I'm going to focus on diet. When we talk about diet, it's basically the food that is consumed, also the water, the drink, and so on. And from diet, we always move to subsistence strategy. Subsistence strategy is the food, how it's obtained, how it's processed, how it's consumed. It's a very complex process. It's also involved, for example, shelter, clothing, everything that you do to basically to survive. Just think about how many tools you have in the kitchen every time you want to cook. All that material, culture, all those artifacts, the production of those things are related to the fact that we need to eat almost every day if we want to survive. So I always give the same example. How many things that you can say associated by just looking at the menu? And no, I'm not pretending to make propaganda for any type of food change, but I always remember when I was a child, there was no McDonald's in my hometown. McDonald's was something special. It means that we need to go into a car drive for almost 1 hour to go from the mountain to the city. So it's already giving you a lot of information like mobility. If you have certain type of food that are not around, that means that people are changing the product or they are traveling around. So that is already giving you a lot of information about past behavior. Getting a car, organizing already, or even cooking, preparing the food is giving you information about social interaction, organization. I know this is a bit of a stretch, but I always believe that you can also use food to infer demography. I remember one day I have a party at home. I didn't tell my parents I ordered 10 pizza, and when my mother came back, I forgot to get rid of the garbage. And when she asked me how many people came, I laughed and I said, just a couple. And very Mediterranean mother, she's laughed, still my face hurt. But that's the thing, that indirectly you can measure the pressure that the human society the impact that the human society are having on the environment, but looking at their food too. And without further ado, the main research question for today's talk is just basically what did Neanderthal eat? How does the study of diet help us to improve our understanding of Neanderthal behavior, social organization, and cognition? Also, I was expected to have more Maltese students here, so I wanted to have this rhetoric question like how we can reconstruct past-human-animal interaction and diet in Malta, because some of these methods are already available for our students. It doesn't matter if they are studying the Maltese temple period or the Bronze Age or the Phoenician, they can also use the same method to answer this type of question. So as I said, I'm a archaeologist, so I study bones remains, but when this is how I have the bones in my lab, but what I want to do is I want to see that how humans were hunting, how humans were eating, and so on. And it's not that straightforward because since an animal is killed or eaten and then the food disposed in the environment, a lot of things in between can happen. Once there is no flesh, the bones are abandoned, they are exposed to the sun for years, even centuries, they are cracked, then there is rain, they get wet. So all of that are gonna affect the integrity of that assemblage. Even when there is still fresh, when there is still flesh, you have carnivore. They destroy all the bones. So, and even when we are excavating, I don't know if some of you are archaeologists, but it's very easy to break what you are trying to recover. And we also have scratch or damage everything that we are trying to recover and protect. So before I start inferring human behavior, I need to assess all the different processes that are going to affect the potential interpretation of the bones assembly that I'm studying. This is what is called taphonomy. Taphonomy is basically defined as the transition of animal remains from the biosphere to the lithosphere. It comes from the Greek word loss of burial, but it's basically understanding how a living bone becomes a fossil. It's important basically for everybody who's studying organic remains, and believe it or not, it came to archaeology around 1970. So it had not been around as a discipline till relatively recent. How can I say an animal on a cave where you also have hyenas, lions, leopards living around at the time of the Neanderthal that had been accumulated by a Neanderthal, by a hominid or a human. So basically, I spent hours looking on a microscope, looking for bone surface modification, and particularly cut marks. These type of linear marks with V-shaping cross section that are produced when you are using a cutting tool. Only hominids or humans are able to produce this type of modification. In addition, we need fiber. We like marrow, so it's very common for hunter-gatherers to break the bones to extract all the nutrients that they are inside the bone. So we are looking for this percussion notches, the cone fracture type of flake that are linked to the processing and exploitation of the bones. And of course, fire. Fire can happen naturally in the wild, but if you are in a cave and you have a heart, it's very common to find bones that have been burned, and we can link them to cooking activity, but also to disposal site use within the cave. So I use all this cave to connect to see, and then when I said integrity of that assemblage, I try to infer human behavior. And as I said, for my PhD, I focused on a site that is in the Zagros Mountains of Iran. The Zagros Mountains, about change of mountain located between Turkey, Iraq, and Iran. And we know Neanderthal were living there. We have Chandler Cave, more than 11 Neanderthal individuals were recovered from that cave. Besme Cave, there are also still remain. At the site I studied, there are no hominid remains associated with them. The site is located in a very interesting region, not far away from Persepolis or Pasargad, but because you have these amazing ancient cities, archaeology didn't care much about Paleolithic. So it had been understudied, but geographically, it's in a region not far away from this intersection between the Persian Gulf, the last Mesopotamian plains, and the southernmost mountain. So if we are talking about mobile hunter-gatherer crossing from Europe to Asia or looking for water sources and food, this is one of the places that you should expect to find things. And the team that I have been working for was founded in 2004, and since then they have identified more than 120 archaeological sites. But only one site has a stratigraphy, because in this type of environment system, caves get eroded very easily. So most of the time what you find is just a stone artifact on the surface. But this site have like a lot of boulder in front of the cave and prevented the sediment got trapped inside the cave and prevented erosion. So we were very lucky. The site was excavated in 2006 and 2007. They found historical pottery. It was used by shepherds during the Islamic period, but also by early Homo sapiens. Due to this potential, they decided to go back to Iran in 2015 and 2017. And they found one of the longest Middle Paleolithic sequence associated with Neanderthal, well dated in the region. So in case you're familiar with my studies, because I'm gonna show just something small, one of the papers that I published for my PhD is available in open access on internet. So just in case you want to take a look. This is what I found. Usually cut marks are an asset because if you have limited access to cut material, you want to maximize the edge. But here in this assembly, almost 20% of the bones have something related to human activity, to Neanderthal. We have all these beautiful linear marks located in areas where you either have a lot of meat or ligaments. And also we have found percussion impact meaning that the bones were broken when fresh to extract the marrow inside. If you take a look, most of the cut marks are located on meat-bearing elements, which, based on ethnography study with modern hunter-gatherer, we know that this modification are related to inflation, feeding, and the memory activity. But also we have cut marks on elements that they don't have any nutrient, they don't have any eatable meat. And we know also based on ethnography studies that they are more associated with disarticulation and skin carcasses. So Neanderthals were active hunters. They have primary access to this type of animal, meat and marrow and so on. If they were a scavenger, the pattern would be totally different. It would mean that we would see bite marks by carnivore on almost all the bones, bite marks or damage related to carnivore in this assembly is very, very rare. It's less than 2%. And we know they were around. We know that there were leopards, there were hyenas, but most of the material in this case site was accumulated by Neanderthal. Same thing with the percussion impact. Sorry for my pronunciation. We use them as direct evidence for within bone nutrient exploitation, marrow, but also fat. Almost all of them, even if they are found in very low number, are present in long bone with high marrow content. So we can say that they were exploiting almost all their resources available within an animal carcass. In Spain, because we love tea, we eat almost everything. We say that we like to eat even the walking, meaning that we maximize every single type of tissue that you can eat from animal carcass. Same thing can be said about the Neanderthal. And one of the highlights of my thesis is that I discovered that they were eating more than just ungulate. By the way, I didn't explain the word ungulate. When I mention ungulate, I mean animal with hook. In this mountain, it's mostly wild goat, but a deer, urok, a horse, all of them are ungulates. And yeah, it was thought that Neanderthals have a very narrow diet, focusing mostly on these big animals. But I discovered that at least in the mountains of Iran, they were exploiting also other type of resources, such as tortoise. Think about how easy to get a tortoise. Everybody can get it, and you put it on the fire and you roast it, and that's it. But and also I found leopard. Leopards are very dangerous animals. They are top predator. And when you see the damage on the bones, on the modification, there where you should expect to find them if you are skinning an animal. But when you are skinning an animal to get pelt. And also, when a carnivore dies, the fur decay very fast. So that means that these bones were processed when they were very, very fresh. That's why I suggested that probably they were killing, defleshing the leopard for the fur. And this is something I got very excited about. This is a very famous Iranian archaeologist who really liked my paper and used AI to depict Neanderthal Iran hunting leopards. How about the bird? Because that's the title of the paper, the diet of these humans of the Neanderthal is more diverse than previously thought. So to be honest, it's very ambiguous, at least in this side, because I didn't find any anthropogenic modification. At the same time, there is no carnivore damage. So here I rely a little bit on negative evidence, because we know that the answer of evidence is not an evidence of accent. If you're familiar with that chicken, it's a very small animal. It's possible to fledge in this articulate a bird without assistance of any tool. And at the same time, most of the birds identified are galliform. They don't live in caves. They are not pigeons. So if they don't have carnivore damage and they don't live there, it means what happened to them, not the cave. That being said, also there are a lot of evidence all over Europe, all over Eurasia during the last 20 years that have proved that Neanderthals were hunting a lot of birds of prey, a lot of ground birds, for food, but also for symbolic behavior. Sometimes you have found cat marks on the wings. I have been suggested that they were exploiting the feather for symbolic behavior or for some type of decorative purpose. When you think about hunter-gatherers, you always imagine them hunting big animals, but rabbits, tortoise, seafood, all these resources were available to them. However, when you look at this assembly, despite the diversity and the richness, because I identified 11 different taxa, the assembly is mostly dominated by what I call medium ungulates, basically wild sheep and goat. And the rest of the group are kind of less important from an economic perspective. Yes, they were exploited some gazelle and some tortoise, but almost no carnivores, almost no big animals. How can we interpret that? So I always work with within the paradigm of human behavior ecology, assuming that all living organisms, including humans, maximize their fitness in a given environment, but by maximizing the return rate, the nutritional return, right? So according to the Precious model, the different animals that you find in the landscape are run based on capture cost, encounter rate, and how much energy you have to invest to be able to eat. And of course, this also included by the reproductive capacity and maturation rate of certain types, but usually big animal, in this case of the sagros, like goat or sheep. In Europe, we've been talking about deer, horse, are the high-rank animals. They are larger, they have more meat, they have more marrow. The thing with the tortoise is so small that it should be considered a low-rank resource, but because there is no processing cost, there is no, it's not that you have to make a lot of trash or invest a lot of energy to hunt it. It's so easy, even a kid can contribute to the domestic economy. So they are also considered high-rank resources. Yeah, for hunting birds, fish, leopard, in this case, rabbit or hare, you either need to invest more time, more energy, you need snares, you need trap. So usually, even though we know the Neanderthal were able to hunt these resources, they are usually represented in relatively low proportion. And this is a pattern that we see all over Europe. There are few exceptions, but those exceptions are related to a really specific ecological condition of those sites. But mostly we can say that Neanderthal were tall predators focusing on large game hunting, such as deer, wild besoar, bison, ogre, horse, all about the geographical range from Portugal to Siberia. Yes, they have a diverse diet. They were able to hunt small game, but most of the time in very low proportion. What else we can do to archaeology? We can study mortality profile. We know when the teeth are erupted. If you have a baby, if you have a child, or if you remember when you were a child, you know that they erupt a really determined time of the year, or when you have certain age. Same thing with the dental wear. The older you get, the more work you get on your teeth. So you can estimate the age, like a forensic. When someone dies, when you find a body, you can hear in the news. They don't know who this person is, but it could be 25 years old, it could be 40. We can do the same thing with animals. And we can obtain a lot of behavior regarding, a lot of information regarding hunting strategy. For example, this is the relative proportion between all individuals, juvenile, and prime adult. Here you have the representation of the type of mortality pattern that you will find study material accumulated by hyena, wolf, and hunting dog. They are ambush hunters, but they are relatively small, so they focus on this easier to catch animal, either the juveniles or the, sorry that I'm laughing. No, it's fine. Yeah, I understand. If I were him. Thank you. I appreciate the support. Well, they are various, they are carnivore, they are predator, but they cannot choose the prey. They cannot hunt the biggest animal. So they focus either in the smaller or the older. If you take a look at the type of animal hunting by a tiger, about African lion, they are opportunistic. They are so big, so fast, they can eat whatever. So basically, they have mortality profile that we call it not selective because they can eat everything. So the type of profile that they have is basically a representative of how that population you find in nature. But when you take a look at Mediterranean Upper Paleolithic hunter-gatherer, Holocene hunter-gatherer, and Mediterranean Middle Paleolithic hunter-gatherer, in this case, Neanderthal, all of them cluster in the same area. All of them have a focus on prime dominant age ungulate, meaning they are the biggest, the healthiest, the one with more meat. That could seem a little bit counterintuitive because you are targeting the most active reproductive animal, but that's something that could be maintained under very low population density or under subsistence strategy when you are very mobile. If you are always moving from one place to another, the animal population has time to recover. But think about prime dominant mortality profile. It also have a lot of implications regarding Neanderthal behavior. It meant that they were able to control procurement by hunting funds. It also implied social cooperation, labor, and a planned use of the space and the landscape. We are talking about this stalking animal. We are talking about knowing the behavior when they are going to move from one place to valley to the mountains seasonally. That's why it's not random to see that most of the sites in the same region are clustered, not far away from the river, in a very narrow gorge in this valley, which it could be an easy spot to target, to trap animals and hunting them. How about the largest of the largest? Because we have found some cut marks on mammoths, on elephants, but you rarely find them on cave. So the question is, did Neanderthal were able to handle to exploit mammals? So another important method that we have to reconstruct human diet is by looking at the isotopic signature of the bones. We know that, for example, with nitrogen, there is an enrichment throughout the trophic chain, meaning that there's a difference between the primary producer of the plant, the herbivore, and the carnivore. So based on the isotopic signature, we can tell the position of where you are in the trophic chain. And this is literally, we can see, I know this is a cliché, but you are what you eat. A classic example is, take a look at the cave bear and the brown bear. Very similar creatures. They are both belong to the order of carnivores. They're so related that, but then when they were living together, we can see that they have completely different diets. The diet of the cave bear is similar to those of the bison, those of the horse and reindeer. So it was fully vegetarian. And then if you take a look at the brown bear, it was carnivore. They have, and the isotopic value are higher, meaning that they were eating a lot of meat. So you can apply this to humans. And the important thing is that, as you can see, this is what we call partitioning. Different herbivores have different isotopic signature. And for whatever reason, mammoth, we don't know if it is because they were eating a lot of grass or because they were so big that there was some type of physiological issue that we don't understand, are they enriched in nitrogen? So if you're eating mammoth, it means that you should have very high values. As you can see, all the carnivores, the wolf, the cave lion, the hyena, the Neanderthal are located they have very high values compared to the herbivores. This is where we have the Neanderthal, for example, from Belgium, from Goyer and Spee. And using Bayesian statistics, we know that the diet was a mix of everything within that range. So by calculating all the probable resources that give, as a result, that isotopic signature, we know that at least mammal is a species that contributes systematically to a minimum of 20% of the dietary protein in Neanderthal, at least 20% and up to 50%. And we know, you can say, well, they are so big, they're so dangerous that maybe they were scavenging the same thing. You need to have, if they die naturally and they were scavenging this animal, it has to be fresh. Otherwise, we cannot digest decay meat. So we are talking about active hunters who were able to target this behemoth. But how about plants? How about plants? Today I was very excited because I thought carrots were imported from America, but it turned out that they are from Central Asia. And that would explain why in Spanish we have an Arabic word, not an American one. So this is a paper that has been published a few months ago from the site I studied for my PhD with some of my colleagues and my supervisor. What you have here is the spiglet of the spiglet of grown wheat. It's not just one. We are talking about thousands. If I remember correctly, more than 20,000 that have been dating around 80,000 years ago. So they have suggested that Neanderthals were gathering a white cereal for food. This is very tricky because this chart could have been done accidentally, and the wind can accumulate natural plants with the decade and so on. But they are using this evidence not only to suggest that Neanderthals were gathered, they were collecting white cereal, but the ecological requirement for the gathering of white cereal that give rise to the Neolithic revolution were already established at the time of the Neanderthal. It had been long since the 70s. It had been assumed that one of the foundations of the Neolithic revolution is to have a broad diet with a lot of different resources and the gathering of this type of plant. And this already was happening 80,000 years ago. But as again, maybe animals were accumulating these resources, maybe it was the wind. So it's very tricky when you are relying on the botanist itself. So another method is to look at the human mind, look inside. This is what happens if you don't watch your kid. It's tartar, we call it in science. I'm gonna take the picture. This is what happens if you don't watch your kids. It's basically mineralized plaque. It's solidified. It's made out of calcium phosphate. And when you eat this plant, some of the micro remains can get fossilized and preserved inside. And you can find them in a burial context. These are examples from Neanderthal. What you have here, for example, are a start from the Vindija Neanderthal. The Vindija is a cave located in modern-day Croatia. Triticea is the family for wheat. This is a direct evidence that they were collecting plants, they were eating wheat and white cereal, and is inside of the mouth. And what I found fascinating is this type of thing. In this case, I have an example from Shanidar. Sorghum is the genus for white barley, another type of cereal, but experimental studies have proved that this type of damage that you have in this picture is related to cooking. You only have that once you have added some type of heating to the plant. But if you add too much heat, then it becomes gelatinized and you cannot identify it. So the fact that it's identifiable as a hormone, it has been interpreted that this food were cooked in water, the same thing that you would bake or boil something. So we are talking that they already cook their food too. And something that I really like is dental microwave texture. I always tell my students that your teeth are in direct contact with your environment. So when I talk about dental microwave, they can texture, they can be used as an indirect proxy to measure the fracture property of the food that you eat. You are eating nuts, you are cracking them, they are hard, brittle, so you are going to have a lot of pits. If you are eating tough, like leaf or meat, always chewing like a cow in the same direction, you expect to see these scratches all in the same direction. So indirectly, you can use this as a process to reconstruct human diet too. This is something called the Last Supper phenomenon, because what you have, I not talk about dental wear, I talk about micro dental wear. So it's giving you the signal of the last food that you eat during the last 24 hours, maybe up to 1 week. So it's very short signal, very low resolution, but when you have study population, if you have a relatively large sample, if they have a diverse diet, you should see a lot of variation. If these people are eating the same thing all the time, the range of variability should be very, very narrow. So it's a very interesting tool to study human diet. And based on what you eat, you can find these different properties. And its topic texture is related to, it's associated with tough product, with lead, with meat. If you are eating a lot of hard product, we should see this complex texture with big piece or different sizes. You should see that the orientation of the scratch is very, they overlap each other, they are not parallel to each other. And the same thing, heterogeneity, you should spell a very heterogeneous texture when you have a very diverse diet, but also you are eating very hard products. So, for example, homogeneity and heterogeneity are different type of properties that anthropology used to study the diet of primates. If you are eating a lot of leaves, for example, if you are eating a lot of nuts and fruits. I decided to focus on heterogeneity and complexity because although there is a lot of overlap, there is this correlation between the type of habitat they use and the type of diet they have. We can see that European Neanderthal living in good habitat, they have a more complex dental microwave texture, they have a more heterogeneous texture, and the variability, the standard deviation is higher, meaning that they have very diverse diet, they were eating a lot of diverse products, and the diet and the variability get narrower when we move to open environment. When we talk about open environment, we'll think about the step, think about all the different type of products that you can find in an open environment, which is basically animal. So they have also used a very fancy statistic to group them to establish relationship between the dental microwave texture of Neanderthal to modern day hunter-gatherer. This type of Euclidean distance study are always applied to genetics or to language. For example, you want to see how close the Maltese language is to Italian, to Arabic, to English, and you can see the distance based on similarity and differences of the vocabulary. Here, we are not using modern hunter-gatherer as a living fossil. We know their diet. We know the cooking habit. We know the environmental constraint. All this information can use to infer similarity and difference between Neanderthal modern hunter-gatherer and to establish a link between past human behavior and modern human behavior. And what we found, for example, that Neanderthal living in open habitat have a very, very similar diet to those of Fuegian, to the modern hunter-gatherer that live nowadays in Tierra del Fuego. Tierra del Fuego is a very cold environment, very open, almost no trees. It's the type of environment that we have in Europe during cold stage, during the Ice Age. Based on ethnological study of these people, they have a diet that consists almost 80% of what they eat is meat. They almost not eat plant resources. So we can infer that these images are telling us that most of the Neanderthals living in open space, in open habitat, have a diet consisting of mostly meat. If you go to the Chumash are modern hunter-gatherers that live in the island of Santa Cruz. They have a mixed environment similar to the Mediterranean mosaic type of habitat. We know they were eating a lot of meat, but around 30–40% of their diet is also based on plants, tubers, and so on. So we can see that Mediterranean Neanderthal living in this type mix of environment they could have had a very similar diet. So just to sum up, based on the study that I've conducted in Iran and my team, we can see that the Neanderthal diet was dominated by caprine, by ungulate. There was some tortoise and gazelle. They exploited carnivore and so on, but in very small quantity. And they exploited this animal for meat and marrow, and we can see that they were collecting wild cereal, and this is the pattern that has been confirmed based on micro remains inside the mouth of Neanderthal. Overall, Neanderthal were very successful individuals. They exploited mostly large game, including megafauna, but also small game. When we look at the pre-age choice, there is a bias toward adult animal, which implies knowing where they're going to be each month of the year, stalking, cooperative hunting, and so on. So they were characterized by this behavioral flexibility and adaptability to numerous and diverse environments, because what I showed you based on dental microware, their diet vary a lot from one habitat to the other. Something that is important to keep in mind is just the numerous economic roles that needed to be filled within a Neanderthal group, within a Neanderthal part. You can imagine yourself a kid helping to the domestic economy, collecting tortoise, collecting cereal. There was room for different roles for a division of labor between men of different ages, women of different ages, and so on. So thank you so much for your attention. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask.
Go ahead. I'm sure you can take this.
Expired. That made me very hungry as well.
You are saying that because of the talk.
Yeah. The four remains that you examined for your PhD, were there any indication as to that might have helped you understand perhaps how the hunting was conducted, whether there any damage to the bones, any piercing or crushing that wasn't about directly related to the food, but rather to the actual cooking process?
At Masai, no. At Masai, I have evidence related to meat processing and bone processing, but not related to the hunting. But there are a few recent papers that have been published in the Journal of Archaeological and Anthropological Science. They have been conducting a lot of experimental studies to understand the impact of a spear. When you throw a spear and penetrate the bone, sometimes you have some very diagnostic damage on the rib, on the vertebra. And using that analogy, that has been identified on many German Middle Paleolithic sites. And they are talking about different type of subsistence strategy to how the hunt was produced. But at this site, no. Most of it, when I talk about the hunting behavior, it's mostly inferred based on what we know about the ecology of the wild goat, or in this case, wild bezoar.
At your site where you find the raw material, is there any evidence of fire?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, okay.
We have conducted the metamorphology. There are a lot of combustion features. Even in the fauna, I haven't showed the picture, but I have clearly calcined bones. Because burning, I always say that it's very tricky to use burning as an indication of cooking, because burning can also be accidental. But when you have bones that are completely calcined, that means that they were touching the fire. They were in direct contact with the flame. And we have a lot of those. But even for those who are very suspicious about the cereal being anthropogenic accumulation, we we have a structure, we have phytolizing. So it's clear to now that the Neanderthal were gathering white period.
I thought the point you made early on about how dietary stuff relates to like demography is very interesting. And obviously with like large animals, you know, unless they're kind of wasting a lot, does kind of say something maybe about group sizes and so on. I think last year there was a new paper about a site in Germany with like elephant remains. And I think they were saying it implied like bigger group sizes that had been built or something. Like, do you have any kind of thoughts on that? And am I remembering the paper correctly?
Yeah, because I didn't want to talk about the fascinating topic of demography. I didn't include that in my presentation. That's the main topic of paper of mine that was accepted last week. It will come out very soon. I will assume everything.
Okay.
When, at least in my side, what we find is that the Neanderthal occupation are very ephemeral. We are talking about short-term occupation. When you look at the lithic, at the fine density, it's so little that we are either talking about a very mobile group or very, very small group. However, when we compare the middle Paleolithic with the early upper Paleolithic, there is a huge increase in fine density. There is a change in the accumulation rate. And from the archaeological perspective, there's an increase in the exploitation of small resources, but also in birds. In this case, I have a paper with the exploitation of partridge. You have beautiful karmas, and they represent like 30% of the total assembly. So comparing modern early Homo sapiens with Neanderthal, we can say at least early Homo sapiens were living larger groups or were more numerous compared to Neanderthal.
But if they're, you know, they're 50% mammoth, like their diet in some places, and obviously you have to eat all that meat before it goes off.
Or they waste.
No, something that I forgot to mention when we were talking about the isotopes, like most of the time there are no mammoth bones in case because you carry with you what you're gonna eat. So it's like you take with you whatever you can eat, and that's it. But I wouldn't say that we can use all these mammoth hunting as a proxy for population. Maybe it was one of the most common meat resources available. Of course, you are going to focus on that.
I don't think they get to the mammoth population. No evidence like that not really impacting them.
Yeah. So if they were not impacting the mammoth population, it means that we are talking about very small groups living in very low density. And this is more or less the situation that we see all over Asia, all over Europe and Asia. If you take a look at the genetics in the Iberian Peninsula and also in Siberia, they are so far away, but still, we are talking about high degree of homozygosity. We are talking, there are very inbreed populations living very small group, and that's basically the norm.
I think someone had a question in the chat.
Is there any question? Yeah, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, in relation to early stage cooking, let's say. So, I mean, there is some evidence for food preparation, and some really high quality tools have been recovered from Neanderthal sites. Is there evidence for utensils?
Yeah, I didn't. Professor Bella told me to be quick, 45 minutes. So, but yeah, we can do a study of used ware, organic residues, and I think maybe Dr. Hugh Brago would be answer better your question. But yes, there is when you look at the organic residue of some of the lithic, we know they were exploiting fish. We know that they were using the tool for working the hide. And yeah, we can use the lithic to the word pattern and the organic residue to connect them with the food they were preparing. Do you want to add?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if the data is fine enough, but if they were around for 360,000 years, and in that period they would have experienced 4 ice ages and 4 glaciers. Do you see any changes in the diet related to those cycles?
When it comes to the animals, no. We are talking about a mountain, so the main animal is goat during the warm period, during cold period. But when you take a look at the botany, we have a lot of wild cereal in the warm period, and when the climate getting drier and colder, there is a shift towards pistachio and then towards legume. This change in the plant has been interpreted as adaptation, changes in diet related to changes in climate.
Very interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
You did do this at first.
Fair enough in that case.
It's adorable.
Thank you for redeeming the Neanderthals in my brain, because I just thought up to that they were just a bunch of folks. No, I realized that there was more to them there.
I'm happy to hear that. No, actually, if you take a look at the Spanish dictionary, Neanderthal is synonym of stupid or at least brutish, brute, something like that. And that's a very old taxation that goes all the way back to the 19th century. And basically, the archaeological record is telling us that at least in terms of diet, subsistence strategy, hunting strategy, and two, there's no difference between Homo sapiens and Neanderthal. We were very similar. We were so similar that we were able to reproduce among the different species.
Just to expand a bit on what Dan said, I believe there was a fairly recent find of the remains of a Neanderthal child, about 10 years old, with clear signs of Down syndrome. And it was interpreted as an indication that although they did live in very small groups, and everybody obviously had to carry their own weight, but they did care for a child who was obviously disadvantaged.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We have very old remains. I mean, by old remains, I mean very old individual Neanderthal. Some of them have pathology. One of the individuals from Canada was deaf. He had like a limb. It means that humans were taking care for each other. That's why almost every day when you see a Neanderthal reconstruction, you can see either they smiling or you can see in the eye that there was this type of love and care and mutual respect for each other. And in fact, in Canada, we have evidence that has been proved recently with geological, geoarchaeological methods that they were burying their ancestors, they were burying the dead. And you will only bury someone if you really care about him.
Respect, yeah.
How do you know he's deaf? He was deaf.
Oh, that's a really good question. Yeah, because the ear is really well preserved, and they have done a CT scan, the same one that they use in a hospital, and there is a lot of pathologies. It has been interpreted that they develop some kind of pathology related to either swimming a lot or because of the cold weather in the steppe. But yeah, there's a entire paper about the reconstruction of the inner ear, very detailed with all the characteristics.
My son had a clue, yeah.
Possible to for like seasonal patterns based on the microwear, because it's like you said, like you can see it could be just from 1 week, but the week before it could be different. Right?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It has not been done in human, but it has been done in ungulates, and you have a seasonal pattern.
Already.
You have a seasonal pattern. There is a group of paleontologists and archaeologists from Tarragona, Ferrara, who are using dental work to study the seasonality of Neanderthal too. But in this case, it's varied from one side to the other. You can see that the different cases were interconnected with each other, and what some sites were used for a long period of time, and others were used for a couple of years, for a couple of days during the winter, during the summer, during the spring. There's a lot of variation.
Just a comment, really. I mean, just going over what you said. I mean, what's I think really interesting is how our perception of the Neanderthals is changing. So in the past, Neanderthals seemed very much as a European thing, and actually the idea of Neanderthals mirrored the so-called classical world. Then, these caves in Siberia, people discovered totally unexpectedly they were Neanderthals 3,000 kilometers east. And, I have a paper that's been rejected 4 times. I built it by one day, saying actually saying Neanderthals actually were in all of Arabia as well. Like at the moment, the southern limit site called Shukba in the West Bank, we published on, but people didn't really look for the site of that in the past. So I think Mario's work in Iran, for example, is showing Neanderthals in a very different world to France or somewhere where people used to focus. But just to kind of make the point, there's probably surprises in store. Like we don't know how far south or east Neanderthal went. And there's a lovely quote. What's your friend Dimitra called? Yeah. She wrote a book about Neanderthals, and it said the humanity of Neanderthals is being expressed in these Asian sites. Right, so the idea is early Neanderthals were like West Eurasian, and they're spreading. And I suspect there's more surprises in stock as we learn more about this Asian chapter.
Yeah, and that's true. I agree with him 100%. Yeah, Neanderthals were seen as a European phenomenon. We saw that Europe was the core of the Neanderthal geography, but Asia was kind of the margin. But we don't know where the core was. I remember when I published my paper, because for me, wild goat is boring. It's like they are everywhere in the mountain. And I was contacted by a Spanish professor from the University of Madrid, telling me that it was fascinating because Neanderthal hunting wild goats in Iberia or the ibex is very rare. It's very rare. It's very, very rare because they don't go so high in the mountain. So he was fascinated about these things. And now that we have Neanderthal all over Iberia, all over Asia, change our perception of the world or the habitat that we're able to explore, even of the technological and toolkit. Honestly, I don't remember because most of the yeah, then for example, all the isotopic analysis are destructive, but we are talking about a few milligrams. As far as I know, they have been tried to study isotopic the iron on Neanderthal, but so far has failed. So, because when I was studying archaeology, we asked that question: can you say something about the iron? Most of the time, the collagen is not preserved. So it's very hard to say. What we know is that they were eating a lot of meat. If you eat a lot of meat, you get food poison. So it's possible to eat a lot of meat where you are eating a lot of fat, a lot of marrow. So as long and that's something that I propose on my side, that most of a lot of bone are destroyed to have access to the fat. And it looks like meat was not the main goal of the hunting forest. So just if you want to eat a lot of meat, it's fine as long as you balance the fat and the marrow.
Mario, thank you for a splendid lecture this evening. Students are lucky to have you talking to them. Thank you all for coming to this lecture, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.